Okay, so Dimple Asmara is not able to be with us today, but she wanted to participate in the forum, and so she is represented today by Antoine Marsh from her campaign, who will be speaking for Dimple. In the middle is Ronnie Chatterjee, and this is Matt Leatherman, the three candidates.
Good afternoon. My name is Antoine Marsh. I'll be representing Dimple Asmara, City Councilwoman out of the Charlotte area, looking to make moves in our North Carolina State Treasurer's Office for the good of North Carolinians. Dimple Asmara has a proven record as a certified public accountant and city council member and fighter for all of North Carolina. Dimple literally went from cleaning hotel rooms to pay for college to managing multi-million-dollar initiatives and overseeing Charlotte's $2.4 billion annual budget. As your next state treasurer, Dimple will champion affordable, accessible health care for all, protect taxpayers' money, restore respect for teachers, police, and public employees, and invest in a sustainable infrastructure. With her CPA experience, Dimple understands the job of the treasurer, managing the money for North Carolina, serving as a sole trustee for over $100 billion pension fund, managing the $3 billion state employee health care plan, which serves more than 700,000 people and oversees all state and local bonds. It is critical that we maintain the highest bond rating and discourage short-term penny-foolish strategies such as 100-year contracts with foreign businesses that take power over public infrastructure meant for the common good. Investments need to be very intentional, involving all sectors of North Carolina, urban and rural, small and big businesses, and people of all ethnicities. We should stop investing in companies that pollute our environment. Investments in an environmentally sustainable future is not only key to our health and survival, it is a wise, long-term fiscal strategy as the old economy is quickly being replaced by a new paradigm. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. A little bit more for the state treasurer candidates. Good afternoon. All right. Well, I want to thank everyone for being here. I want to thank my opponents, Matt and Antoine, representing Dimple. We were really excited, frankly, to get the invitation because the state treasurer is the most important job that you've never heard of. And so when we got this email, we said, thank goodness somebody cares about this job that we're all running to do. When you think about the state treasurer, it's unique across all state governments, not just here in North Carolina, but across the country. State treasurer is the sole trustee of a $100 billion pension fund. There's only 4 states where that's true. That means there's no board telling you how to allocate assets. It means there's no one to oversee whether you're investing in environmentally or sustainable companies. It's all up to the treasurer. But you also manage the state employee health care plan. And there's folks here who are deeply affected by that. If you're going to Cone Health for your health care in Greensboro or in Guilford County, we're the largest payer of health care in North Carolina. So as you think about what the state treasurer can do, it touches all parts of the economy, from investments to health care and to local and state bonds. But let me say something here in my opening statement that's a little more general, which is, I spent 2 years working for President Obama at the White House Council of Economic Advisors. I worked on both his campaigns. I was proud to serve in the White House. But one thing I learned during the Obama administration is, while progressives and folks on the Democratic side have really done really well in grassroots organizing, in changing some laws and getting the Attorney General's office, we've left finance behind. Finance and economics is where we can disrupt the game, because that's where the power is. So when I think about what President Obama taught me, I think about how we can use our investment power. Think about the real estate companies that are gentrifying places like Greensboro, Durham, Charlotte. The investors in those companies are public pension funds. We have to be using our shareholder power to make statements about what we think about affordable housing. Think about climate change. We ought to be investing in companies that are sustainable, and the companies that are not, we ought to be putting pressure on the boards of directors. Let's talk about diversity and inclusion. Think about how we need so much more diversity, both from a gender standpoint and a demographic standpoint on our boards. A state treasurer can make this happen. So what I want you to care about this race isn't just another statewide office in North Carolina, a political stepping stone for someone to do something else. This is a job where you can have a change agent if you elect the right person. And I've learned that from the Obama White House. I'm trying to bring it back here in North Carolina. I'm a PhD economist who teaches at Duke. I think I've got the right skills to do it. I'm looking forward to sharing my ideas. Thank you.
Good afternoon, my name is Matt Leatherman, and I'm also standing to be North Carolina's next state treasurer. I'm a first-time candidate, like everybody else in this race. I think the right places to start are, why are you doing this, and how do you plan to get it done? This race is substantially about healthcare, and I'm in it for that reason. I'll share two very quick stories with you. The first, I'll take you back to New Year's Eve Day 2016, a holiday. My wife wakes up that morning carrying our second child, but feeling sick and worried about the pregnancy. Calls of the holiday, she's not able to reach either her obstetrician or our family general practitioner. She's a public school educator here in North Carolina, though, and that means that she can call the preventative nurses line of the state health plan. Those folks do take her call, coach her into the hospital, but we find out we need to have baby Josie on the spot. That was a life-saving intervention for my child. The state health plan was there for my family when we needed to make that call. She still was a very difficult circumstance, came to us at 27 weeks and a pound and a half. But we had the chance to fight for her life and to win. While we were there, we got to know another family, led by a mother named Dominique Comer, African-American mother. Dominique had not had equitable care during her pregnancy, so it was only after she had not been able to sleep or to see through a headache for 3 days that they got her into the hospital. She was delivered, brought to Chapel Hill. Her child survived for 5 months and then lost her life because of that inequity. The state health plan has a chance to lead us toward a more accessible and equitable healthcare future. How am I going to get it done, though? I'm the only person in this race with experience in the office. I was former Democratic Treasurer Janet Cowell's policy director during the last several years of her tenure. You're going to hear a lot of very similar ideas and values on the stage today. I'm trying to differentiate myself as a person who has done the work before in this office, whether it's creating a new fund for small and emerging managers, minority and women-owned businesses, whether it's investing for the long term, whether it's forcing the $7 to $8 billion need for school construction onto the State Board of Education in June. So I appreciate the chance to be with you here all today. I look forward to your questions.
To get us started, just by way of background, I was on staff at the General Assembly. About 5 of those 7 years, I covered the state health plan. One of the big problems we had structurally was a long-held promise to state employees that coverage would be free. In order to cover that cost, very different from most employers where you have to contribute some amount. And that was a promise that was made to state employees. One of the ways to balance that, though, is to increase the cost of premiums on families, spouses, children coverage, which has built up over many, many years to be quite a bit of tension, I guess is the best way to describe it. From your perspective, how do you balance that tension between honoring state employees and the fact that, as we all know, they're not paid as much as in the private sector with this promise of good benefits, with this structural issue of then putting all the money on to families, which, oh, by the way, if it's too expensive, you go somewhere else, which then makes the problem of covering the employees that much harder. So what are your thoughts on there? And really, how do you balance that?
Okay, well, the first thing we need to do is understand that as a country, our healthcare priorities is much bigger than Dimple Ajmera. It's much bigger than this room and this group running for North Carolina State Treasurer. Our healthcare system is broken, and we can fix it by making an obligation to each and every last citizen as a right. That's one of the things that is coming down the pipe when it comes to Medicare for all. See, understanding health insurance, meaning that it is a right and your state should obligate you as an employee and understand that right. So now the question is, where do we get the money from? How do we fund it? Well, we need to stay away from taxing as much as we can, but look for other alternatives, such as, for an example, this has nothing to do with Dimple Ajmera's ideas because she's not here, but I'll give you an example because she does not believe in raising taxes, but a tax alternative. For example, and this is just an example, I would propose a 20% tax on recreational marijuana in the state of North Carolina, 5% towards healthcare. That's a start.
And just as a reminder, you have just 1 minute to answer that question.
So, 1 minute on healthcare in America, start me timing, right? So, look, first place you start with healthcare in North Carolina, we need to expand Medicaid. I'm sick and tired of watching, yeah, we can clap for that. I'm sick and tired of watching other states like Kansas and Arkansas take our money and expand Medicaid. It's the right thing to do, and it economically makes sense. And you can't reform the state health plan until you have Medicaid expansion. Why? Because if I'm the largest bill payer to Cone Health, and we have people coming in who don't have insurance because they're not covered by Medicaid, the Cone Health is gonna have a hard time taking any changes we make to the state health plan. That was the main discussion between Treasurer Falwell and the hospitals, and ultimately why the clear pricing plan failed. You gotta start with Medicaid expansion first and foremost. Next, and I know I have 10 seconds to say this, we gotta stop thinking fee for service. In our healthcare system, we are paying for services to be done, regardless of whether the health outcomes are better or worse. When people come back to the hospital 30 days later, why am I still paying the fee for service? I wanna move our state health plan to what all the other big insurer payers are doing, like Medicare, for example, and even Blue Cross Blue Shield, which is paying for value in healthcare outcomes. That's the first 2 steps in terms of reforming the state health plan. Hopefully you'll give us more questions on this so we can get deeper into it. I don't want to make changes to the state employee side before we do some of those other changes.
I'm gonna take that and run with it a little bit. I told you that my wife's an educator. I'm now a candidate nearly full-time. We are on the state health plan paying these family rates. She's supposed to carry something like $750 a month just in premium on a salary or in the range of $50,000. How is it that we're able to do that? We are a Medicaid family. Right now, when a child is born with birth weight as low as mine was, you're able to be weighed into that program. I will be the only Council of State member able to talk about why Medicaid expansion is essential for the state health plan as somebody currently on the program right now. The Treasurer's voice has to be the loudest for Medicaid expansion. When other people in the state have coverage, the cost of care for educators and state employees becomes less. Additionally, though, let's not delude ourselves into thinking that the state health plan is perfect. It is not. It is difficult to use. One of the things that we put in place when I was still working in the Office of Treasurer Cowell was an audit of how we can make this plan easier for people to use, therefore be healthier, therefore lower the cost of the plan. We had all of that in place, but when people showed up in January of 2017, Dale Falwell wouldn't let them in the building.
Gary McCants. I'm going to stay with minority women and business-owned companies in the region. How will you, if you're elected to this office of state treasurer, work with the General Assembly to champion equitable opportunities for women and African Americans?
So I'm a professor of business at Duke University, and so I teach entrepreneurship and small business. And one of the most startling facts in America about entrepreneurship and small business is that it is the #1 way to move from the bottom to the top. But there's another unfortunate fact, which is it's almost exclusively reserved for white men. And so you don't have a lot of people in entrepreneurship and small business who actually need that. And so we have to broaden opportunities through the government contracting system. So I will be a constant advocate to the General Assembly on this issue. Let me say 2 things. When you have $100 billion, you have 100 billion votes on the way capitalism works and who it works for. And I intend to use it. So first is, who are we going to invest our money with? Other states have emerging manager programs. Ours has been started and kind of stalled. Texas is a good example. It's not just blue states or red states. We can model after programs like that to make sure we invest in minority and women fund managers. When you manage money, we're talking about wealth, not income. Income is about getting by. Wealth is about getting ahead. Minority and women entrepreneurs don't get enough of the ladder. Second thing we should do on the hospital side, going back here, no one's talked about this. The biggest economic driver in most parts of rural North Carolina is the hospital. The biggest employer west of Charlotte is Mission. The biggest employer east of Durham is Biden. So how come the state treasurer, the largest payer, isn't knocking on their door and saying, who has the cafeteria contract? Well, I've met a couple businesses I can recommend. Who's got the uniforms contract? I'd like to have a couple businesses I can recommend. We gotta use our economic power to get more people in the game, and that's what I'll do when I'm state treasurer.
Is this on? Yep. Okay, sure. I'm gonna take that question in a little bit of a different direction. Not just how you work with the General Assembly, but what the treasurer can do on the treasurer's own authority, because there's a great deal of authority in managing that $100 billion. The reason why there's a skeleton in place for putting more and more contracts with women and minority-owned firms is because I helped Janet Cowell to do it. Small and Emerging Managers Fund 2 exists because of her leadership with my help. We have the North Carolina Venture Capital Multiplier Fund, which helps grow our businesses in a broader way, transitioning technologies out of our universities into our commercial sectors, also because of her leadership with my support. So that infrastructure is there. I want to take the last little bit of my time, though, and explain why that's important. It's important to do as part of a more just and equitable society. It's also important to do to pay returns and pension checks for educators and state employees for the next generation. When all of the money floods to the same managers in the same cities or to the same providers in the same cities, it gets expensive. This is a way to get cheaper access to opportunity.
The best way to make sure that women, minorities in the community, small business owners looking to make an extra dollar succeeds is to watch them do it, watch the funding from beginning to end, make sure the money gets in their pocket, and then promote their success story so the next woman and the next minority can follow that model and do the exact same thing. A lot of times, when it comes to big small business ownership, we know there's money, we see there's money, but we see the money disappear, and the small business owner looking for a helping hand is left in the dark. So we need to turn economically, small business owners, minorities, we need to promote the success stories. That way we will see their vision all the way through and promote it and continue to do the same thing each and every time.
Good afternoon. I'm Todd Warren with the Guilford County Association of Educators. When we went to Raleigh, we had 25,000 educators in Raleigh last May 1st, and we came with 5 top priorities. One of them was restoration of state retiree healthcare benefits. In the state we have a problem with teacher retention, but currently, starting in January 2021, if you work for the school system or work for the state, you will no longer be eligible for having state healthcare plan retiree benefits upon retirement. I want to know how you, as state treasurer, would work with the North Carolina General Assembly to make sure that this is restored so that we can continue to recruit for jobs like teachers and other state employees.
I appreciate the question. So, education is not a lucrative field. Part of the promise that we make to educators is security. Taking away health care to somebody who's between 52 and 62 years old is not security. The reason why that was done is because of trajectory of increases in costs in health care made the Republican General Assembly think, let's just forego. There is a space between 0 and 100 here. And so this is an area where collaboration with the General Assembly is necessary. The Treasurer's Office does not have the unlimited remit to restore this. It will require that collaboration, and that's going to be finding the common ground somewhere between 0 and 100 to get this care back in a way that is fiscally sustainable. There's a history of getting this done in the Treasurer's Office, including under Treasurer Cowell's leadership. There's been quiet cooperation between the office and the General Assembly, whether it's been held by Republicans or Democrats, to keep our programs in good funding in the case of the pension and in manageable funding in the case of health care. We're going to have to get back to that basic. Democrat, we're going to cross the aisle, Republican, to find a space of compromise where this care can be restored in a way that we can maintain sustainably for the next generation of educators.
As a state employee, healthcare situation, retirement, investment out of your paycheck wouldn't be a major situation if it wasn't in the hand of the General Assembly, whose pendulum goes back and forth, Republican or Democrat. It switches up every now and then. That's not sustainable. That's why we're here talking about it. The state treasurer needs to understand that we need to do something at the federal level that applies to each and every North Carolinian. Get it out of the hands of the state assembly. The state assembly, matter of fact, the state assembly and the citizens of North Carolina should have the same health care plan in this country. So there's no debate, no argument. That's one of the reasons why I support Medicare for all. One health care system for the entire country. Let's take the debate that we needed off the table.
So both my parents were public educators. I grew up on state health plan. I grew up with their pension. Because we had those things in place, because they weren't pulled out from under them, we were able to get a mortgage on a house. I was able to go to college. When you change the rules of the game on people who join the profession, you're pulling the rug out not just from them, but their family's economic security. You can't do that. And when we think about the recent court decision, the Andrew decision about sound basic education, how are we going to provide kids with a sound basic education if we don't got a competitive benefits package? My parents didn't get into education because of money. They got into education because they loved teaching, but they also expected that they would be compensated on the benefit side to make up for the low salaries year after year after year. And so I think we can't let this stand, right? We need to make sure we restore those benefits. One way we can do that is by improving the investment in the state treasurer's office. Our current treasurer has a really poor investment strategy. And I don't have time to explain it other than the saying, imagine if you picked up a nickel and 20 bucks fell out of your pocket every day. That's what we're doing in the state treasurer's office. And we have to fix that first, because that $20 could pay for a cost of living increase. It could pay for part of restoring the retiree benefits. By changing the investment policy, we'll be able to give back people the benefits that we need to stay competitive in the economy. That's what matters most.
All right, another question. So last year, Treasurer Falwell proposed what he named the Clear Pricing Project, which was basically a way to cut providers' rates by about 30%, was his original proposal. A lot of providers didn't sign up for that, and the effort failed. However, he's still pressing forward with it. So his solution to a more expensive system was just to pay less. What proposals do you have to try to address increasing costs with the state employee group?
One of the reasons healthcare is a situation is because we're being paid far too less. We're asking people to put money aside for retirement, which is a part of the subject today. But if we don't raise wages, where are they getting the money from? If we want to raise taxes on a project, where would we get the money from? We can't ask the people that haven't got a raise in 20 years. We can't keep leaning on them. So one of the things we have to understand that if we want a healthcare system fixed, part of that solution is making sure $15 an hour minimum wage, a living wage for each North Carolinian, to have disposable income, so if there is something to be done in the state and a citizen wants to participate, then they might have a little disposable income to say, okay, I agree with a tax increase if it's going to benefit me and futures to come. So the bottom line is wages. Wages is a part of that. The Treasury can help that.
Thank you.
So when I look at Treasurer Falwell's clear pricing plan, you can look at two parts. How did he negotiate and what was the outcome? I looked at this with President Trump when he took over. I looked for Obama, and President Trump had all these great ideas. He was going to negotiate better. So I wanted to look to see what was his style and what was an outcome. Well, Falwell had a similar approach, and he said, I'm going to decide to pay less. Well, it turns out not enough hospitals agreed with his demand. And as a result, we signed a contract a year later that's worse than the one we had before. At the same time, he held state employees and educators' healthcare hostage during this time. People were worried about being out of network. If you're in a state health plan, you're worried about being out of network in the hospital, that can destroy your family's financial future. And so what I think is, I take a very different approach. One is, day one, expand Medicaid needs to be the first thing any treasurer is talking about in North Carolina. Healthcare payments are all linked, and if you're not talking about that, you're not serious about healthcare. Second, let's move to a collaborative approach with all the stakeholders, the health system, the physicians, the first responders, everyone who's involved in healthcare, because you can't get a deal unless everyone's at the table. And third, let's push towards value. I want to ask from Cone Health, I want to ask from all the big health systems questions about what we're paying for. When I shop for Christmas presents for my kids, I'm looking at price, but I'm also looking at stars, right? The quality of it. We don't do that with healthcare, and we can start doing it. So that's how I have a different approach from Treasurer Falwell.
Clear Pricing Project is a very complicated program, and the answer is surprisingly simple. Healthcare costs too much, and step one is not making it more expensive. When you go out there and say, we're gonna pay this, who's in? The people who are gonna get more money sign up, the people who are not do not. That is exactly what happened. The state health plan is more expensive today because of Dale Falwell's Clear Pricing Project than it would have been if nothing had happened. So step one is, don't shoot yourself in the foot. Beyond that though, I'm going to again play those greatest hits. Medicaid expansion is part of the answer. We have to do that. I totally agree. If you're not talking about Medicaid expansion, you're not serious about controlling costs of healthcare. Additionally, it used to be the case, just within the past couple of years, that educators or state employees, local government employees, premiums would be cheaper if they participated in preventative care that made them healthier. In the interest or with the goal of making the health plan cheaper, Dale Falwell took that away. If an apple a day keeps the doctor away, why are you gonna cut the apple? We gotta get that back in, double down over the long term, we'll have a healthier population and a healthier state health plan.
Sticking with minority women in business enterprise companies, again, if elected, your first 90 days in office, what would be your action plan to make sure equitable distribution of products and opportunities with minority business?
First, we need to make public what percent of our current vendors in the treasurer's office are minority women-owned businesses. Getting that data is really key. Then we have to benchmark it to the relevant population of firms and people, right? You can have a goal of 5%, but North Carolina is much more diverse than that. The next thing we gotta do is be transparent about all the fund managers we're investing in. We're giving these people hundreds of millions of dollars, in some cases $1 billion, to manage our money. What is the background of the folks who are managing? How well they've been performing, and who's on their team, right? Diversity isn't just the top, right? It's the entire organization. These are all things we'll make transparent, and we can do that, if not 90 days, I think in the first 3 months of a relevant administration. Last thing I'll say is you just gotta be a champion going around the state talking about this. I talk about diversity and inclusion in a way that a lot of other statewide candidates will avoid. But the reason I can do that is because it's a risk management and business issue. The CEO of Bank of America is talking about it too. Why? Because it's not about the right thing, though it is the right thing. It makes business sense to have diverse boards of directors. It makes business sense to invest in diverse people with different ideas. And so we gotta start talking about these issues like climate change, diversity, inclusion in the language of economic opportunity and growth. That's the first thing I think we can do. I will say this too, I think you have to be in touch with the communities that are affected. I was proud to receive the endorsement of the Committee on the Affairs of Black People in Durham, the AFL-CIO, the People's Alliance, all groups that put a high premium on minority-owned businesses and increasing them in North Carolina.
I'll give you a one-day answer. It used to be the case until 2.5 years ago that there was a policy governing the way that we invested our assets that looked toward the long term, with an eye on the environmental and social impacts of the way we invest and also the governance impacts in the way we invest. This is not just within the department, but this is $100 billion spread across about every company that issues stocks and bonds in the world. A big part of that was diversity in corporate boardrooms. We can restore that policy the first day and get our team back to work, ensuring that the boards of directors for about every company that you've ever heard of is comprised of the communities that it has as customers, the communities in which it exists. When you get down to the departmental level, I've been there with some scars to prove how hard it is to get the data on what our vendors look like. It is going to take a little bit of time to get that data compiled. So the 90-day plan within the organization is to know where we're at. I do know from having done it before that it is nowhere near where it needs to be. And so along that pathway, we can begin working to do better.
First 90 days. On day one, find the small business, minority business owners that want to go into business for themselves. Fill out the application. Get them started. Find the funding. Pull the funding that you have for them to the side and walk them through the process. Deliver their success story. Don't just talk about it. There are people right now, there are minority women right now who want to go into business for themselves, right now. There's not a shortage of that. But there's a shortage of effort, there's a shortage of oversight, there's a shortage of morality. What we need to do is put our women first. Put our minority women first. Put our minorities together. Give them the funding that's put up for and help them. Sometimes they need a push. Don't just sit back and wait for them to walk through the door. Put the word out. Get the people together that deserve the cash to help them get their small business up and running and get them started. Your first 90 days.
Given that you guys each have just about a minute to respond, I want to stick with the current subject of the state healthcare plan so we can dig in a little deeper. As was started with talking about the clear pricing project, it made a lot of us as state employees, super nervous that we would be out of network. And we were looking at this situation as this, really high stakes game of chicken that, you're correct, it resulted in some higher costs. But at the same time, we know, healthcare in America is more expensive than virtually any other country in the world. And so the current state treasurer, Del Follow, did have a point that, the costs need to be addressed. What do you see, there's 700,000 people on the state healthcare plan currently. How do you see best to, engage those folks and the public that's on the, benefits from the healthcare plan in a way that also addresses the cost and can negotiate a better deal for all of us?
700,000 people, state of North Carolina. Number one, they should be allowed to unionize. Once they do that, I believe those 700,000 people are smart enough to put a healthcare system in place and present it to the state. They know what we need. They know the answers. They know the fixes. Let's get them started. It's all about unionizing the state employees, getting on the ground, getting the information that you need to turn it around. That's not only with healthcare, that's with any other issue that the state of North Carolina may have. The state employees can fix it. They're on the ground. They're putting in the work. They're reaping the benefits if you allow them to be themselves and collectively bargain.
One of the things about this campaign that is an eye-opener for me is growing up with parents who are educators and being on a state health plan is how many people around North Carolina who have insurance are so worried about health care. We spend a lot of time talking about people who don't have insurance. We should. That's why we need to expand Medicaid. There's so many people who have insurance who are worried and can't afford the out-of-pocket and copay. Conservatives like to talk about rationing healthcare. You're already rationing healthcare when people feel like they can't go to the doctor or buy their prescription drug because it's too expensive. So when I think about what we can do, Dale Folwell had one part right. We need more transparency in healthcare in terms of pricing, but he went about it in the wrong way. If you're going to go down that gauntlet, you have to come back with savings, and he didn't. And he's going to try the same approach now. We're not going to get any different result. What I would do is start to negotiate with hospitals in the following way. Let's give the same contract that you give to Medicare, to Blue Cross Blue Shield, where you take some of the risk at the health system. If people are sicker, if they're coming back to the emergency room, if they're having more procedures, some of that cost should be borne by the health system. And there's all of these two-sided contracts that are existing in healthcare today. State health plan is in the 20th century, not the 21st century. So all I'm asking from our health systems is, let's look at the contracts you already have with private insurers like Blue Cross, with public payers like Medicare and Medicaid. Why should the state health plan be treated differently than insurance plans that are already out there? The answers aren't sort of difficult, they're already out there. Thank you.
I'm going to quickly allude to the two things I mentioned before and then dive into a story. So again, Medicaid expansion and preventative care are a big part of cost control. We don't have our own house in order. We certainly need to work with doctors and hospitals to control costs, but this plan is not doing all that it can right now. I'll share a story that I heard a couple months ago from a neurosurgeon, right? One of the most expensive services that you can receive. This person will routinely do operations, brain surgeries, for people whose weight has become such an issue that's affected their blood pressure, is creating swelling on the brain. Insurance will cover that. Neurosurgery. But it will not cover the behavioral intervention and basic dietary services to address the weight issue up front. That's expensive, y'all. We got to do better inside of our own organization, thinking about all of these different ways in which the design of our plan interferes with a healthy life, get out of our own way, and then be a partner with the doctors and hospitals and say, now what can you bring to the table?
So heard a little inkling in this at the beginning, but do want to hear about your investment philosophy, what you think about investing. We've talked a lot about healthcare. Don't want to not talk about the investment part. So what are your thoughts on an approach, a strategy, how that differs individual versus institutional, anything like that that you can get into, again, in just 1 minute?
Thanks, me, right? So Matt and I are laughing because we never get to go this deep. I mean, being a nerd, it's so fun to talk about being the state treasurer this long. No one has that much interest, so thank you. Right now, our investment strategy consists of putting the money under Dale Folwell's mattress. That's what cash is. And so we have to get out of cash and back into the markets. The markets have grown, equity markets, 33% since he made this decision, costing us $2.5 billion. So we have to get back into the markets. Okay? It doesn't have to be a high-cost manager. I have my money in a Vanguard account. If I did what Dale Folwell did with our $99 billion retirement fund in my very small Vanguard account, my wife would fire us as my financial advisor, okay? So we have to change the way we invest by putting the money from cash back to work in the markets. It's not gonna be easy because he's trying to time the market, which is the worst thing to do, and now we're gonna have to time it to get it back. We also have to look at other asset classes that deliver returns. There's a lot of things to invest in, and he seems to have a strategy that he's being risk averse with cash. He's actually taking enormous risk by putting it in cash. He's also taking enormous risk investing in companies that are not environmentally responsible. They're more likely to have scandals, that don't have diverse boards. So using an environmentally and social and governance lens to look at our investments will be the other part of our plan, and looking at asset classes to deliver returns. You gotta use the professional staff you have. First thing we can do is hire a chief investment officer. I got a PhD in economics, but I'm not managing the 95 billion. I'm hiring a person who's spent their life managing money to do that part of the job. We currently have an interim CIO. We need a new chief investment officer.
I'm gonna reiterate a lot of that and then add something to it. This is the most fundamental point that you can hear today. We pay retirement checks to educators, state employees, civil servants across North Carolina by receiving their retirement savings, investing them in the market, earning a return, and cutting a check. $100 billion. 15 of it is out of the market for largely political or just misinformed investment reasons. That makes retirement less secure for educators and civil servants. This is not about some complex investment math. This is about whether you can retire. We have to get that back in there. We have to have a full-time chief investment officer. Additionally, it is not appropriate for one individual to be the sole trustee of that amount of money. We need a board of directors for this investment. Iowa Balls put forward legislation at one time to accomplish that, but the Republican General Assembly opted not to act on it because they thought one day they might be able to have this authority for themselves. Well, now they do. And it's costing us billions of dollars that translates into retirement security foregone for educators, state employees, and civil servants. So in addition to reinvesting the money, in addition to getting fully staffed back up, we need to get a board of directors through the General Assembly.
Once again, retirement. The citizens of North Carolina, here's a little more to put back. For years, the state of North Carolina has been looking for our niche. A lot of people understand it as the Research Triangle Park, from Raleigh to Greensboro to Charlotte. We've been looking for that niche, something that we can be a part of collectively as a state. At one point, it was technology. Now, with investments, luring, green, clean energy, jobs, right now, it's prime and ready for the Research Triangle Park. So what does that mean? That means our state treasurer must understand that there's opportunity there. There's investment opportunity for state employees there to build those investments on retirement. $15 an hour to make sure you can put back a little more on Social Security. And understand that this is the prime opportunity to add clean energy to the overall goal at our State Department, as it refers to our treasurer, for future generations to come with investments for the state of North Carolina and its employees and citizens.
Staying with minority business and enterprise companies again. In your first 30 days, what kind of person would you identify to be the champion for carrying out inclusionary measures and goals? Would it be the chief of staff, or who would that be?
The chief of staff is an unsung position in government. The answer to that question is yes, right? Because the chief of staff then turns around and defines what your staff is. And they turn around and define who we hire and who we involve in our enterprises. One of the most important decisions that a treasurer makes is the team that that person has around her, right? The job of the treasurer is not to be the chief economist, is not to be the state's accountant. It is to lead the organization. It is to have the right people in place. One of the biggest regrets that I have about Janet retiring is the disassembly of her team that got that work done. The chief of staff is the person who's going to be a partner to the individual elected to this office to help put that team back in place. And so, yes, the first step toward more women and minority-owned businesses as vendors, to more diverse board directors, to a more diverse investment policy is going to be the individual who helps you build your team.
I agree. You need someone that's gonna help you build your team. But one thing for sure, two things for certain. If you want things to move a little fast, you might wanna sit down with your governor. Because you need to be on one accord to push things forward. It's chess, it's not checkers. And you know what I mean by that. Republican, Democrat, we have to play. We're not listening to each other right now. And so we have to adjust. So yeah, chief of staff will help you put a dynamic team together with your ideas, with your values. But the number one person you need to be on one accord with, in my opinion, is your governor.
So just a different take on this. I actually would seek to hire a chief diversity officer. I come from an organization that has hired a chief diversity officer. Many leading companies have hired CEOs. They don't always work, but I do think having one person in the organization whose job it is to be thinking about diversity and inclusion is really important. Chief of staff has a lot of different things to do. We got a state health plan, you've got the local government commission, which we haven't even talked about, that runs all the bonds. Treasurer sits on the State Board of Education, the Community Colleges Board. So a CEO, a Chief Diversity Officer, might be something that we could have in there to make sure we prioritize these issues across everything the Treasurer does. I think that might be one way to complement a Chief of Staff who also is on the same page on inclusion. Let me just say one thing, which is, having someone from a diverse background be the economic official that represents North Carolina can be powerful in and of itself. It'd be just a few years ago that HB2 was facing North Carolina when I would go around the country and try to sell this state to other people. But imagine if our chief economic and financial officer was someone like me. I don't even need to say anything. Walk through the door and people know that North Carolina is open for business, all kinds of business, no matter where you're from, whether your parents immigrated here or came on the Mayflower, and no matter how many letters there are in your last name, because Chatterjee has got a lot, okay? So I think that's another thing just by being me that I can do to try to sell people on North Carolina diversity.
Moving back to the issue of schools, when we were talking with the county commissioners, you heard that the recent building study found there's $1.5 billion in need in Guilford County alone. We've heard that there's $8 billion in school construction needs in the state. I think it's safe to assume it's actually a lot higher than that, given the detailed study that was done here has not been done in the rest of the state. But yet we failed to put a school construction bond on the ballot. The governor had proposed a $2 billion school construction bond that didn't make it to the ballot. But in reference to the need, I'm just going to read you a quote from the current treasurer, Dale Falwell, and I would like you to respond. He said, "School construction and finding a way to do school construction, especially in rural, depopulated parts of North Carolina, is vitally important. But it has to be done with the understanding that unlike the federal government, we do not have an unlimited credit card." Can you speak to what the Office of the Treasurer could do to help either what resources we could bring to bear for school construction and school infrastructure in North Carolina?
We can get it done, but we have to be on one accord. And I mean everyone from the state treasurer to the General Assembly to our governor to every city in the state. Part of the problem and why we haven't been able to get things done is because we're too divided. But if we could just simply get everyone in the room together with one goal, talk about it, debate about it, and then move on it with everything we have, all inclusive, I believe we can get it done. So in reference to the Treasury Department, in reference to our ability for green energy jobs, it's prime, the time is now. We must get the entire state on one accord and cut the division out.
Traveling around the state, me and Matt have both seen this. It's a sad fact in North Carolina, sometimes you'll see two schools 7 or 8 miles apart. That the condition of the buildings are vastly different. And of course, the zip code you're going into doesn't just affect your educational outcomes, It affects those 13 years you spent in the building that's falling apart. Like you said, $8 billion at least in terms of need in North Carolina. The treasurer plays a big role. You run the local government commission that approves all state and local bonds. It also provides technical assistance to all the counties and cities on how they do the bonds. Some cities and counties need more or less advice. Here's what I do. Dale Folwell's quote, and I've read this, is not taking into account a cost-benefit analysis. The cost he's looking at, right, is the cost of servicing the bonds. The benefits last forever. If you think about the benefits of going into a school where you have heat, where you have drinking water, where you have a teacher in a comfortable classroom, it's immense. The impact of a kindergarten teacher is estimated at $1 million over the lifetime of a student. Think about how valuable a building is. So are we using cost-benefit analysis, or are we using a penny-wise, pound-foolish strategy from Treasurer Falwell? I would say we got to give cities and counties the assistance. We also have to be a little more creative in how we calculate the benefits of these bond offerings. And when the treasurer approves these things, these need to be part of the calculations with a really good professional staff as well there at the LGC.
My reaction to that is it's classic Dale Folwell. It's the same abdication of leadership there that we've also seen in every other dimension, whether it's trying to figure out how to make our infrastructure more resilient to hurricanes, whether it's standing up for educators and state employees when the legislature is trying to close the pension. Of course, we do not have unlimited credit, but saying that does not do anything to say what we can do. The job, again, is to lead. Ronnie hit the nail on the head with why the treasurers are talking about this. The office leads the local government commission that has a responsibility for assisting towns, cities, counties with their infrastructure needs, including school construction. This is not an abstract need. One of the commission candidates earlier referred to seeing mold in classrooms. There's been a nonprofit called Environment North Carolina that's done a couple of site studies in different counties looking at lead in the drinking fountains in schools. I haven't seen the Guilford County statistics, but in Charlotte-Mecklenburg, they tested 89 schools. 41 of them had lead in the drinking fountains. Okay? That is, you can't learn in that environment, as Commissioner Alston said earlier. You cannot have a learning environment there. So, we have plenty of credit as a state to begin moving toward a statewide school construction bond of at least the amount that's been proposed before. Additionally, we have to restore the North Carolina Education Lottery money for its purpose, school construction.
Dimple has a record of bold accomplishments. She's widely known for chairing the Council Environment Committee and helping Charlotte become a global leader in sustainable and bipartisan support. The adoption of the Strategic Energy Action Plan is the city's first framework to transition to a low-carbon future, which is one of the things that I talked about earlier. We talk about investments, we talk about retirement, we talk about how the citizens of North Carolina can prosper financially and how the Treasury Department can invest in a return. Clean energy is the way. She's already proven that she has what it takes by establishing clean energy outcomes, just as Greensboro, North Carolina, with our bus and our transportational system, clean energy buses.
Thank you.
That's the way to go.
Thank you.
That's Dimple. Keep it simple. Vote for Dimple.
And Ronnie Chatterjee.
So people like me don't usually run for office. I'm a nerd, I'm an economist. It all changed when President Obama was elected. When he said that a skinny kid with a funny name could be elected president, I kind of thought he was talking about me. And I decided to give it a try. Look, we need a nerd in this job. You've heard all the details. We need someone who can stand up to hospital CEOs and negotiate a good deal, who can invest our money wisely. I think my skills are a good match for this position. But there's another reason why I'm running, which is, President Trump had a rallying Greenville a little while ago where they started chanting, send them back, send them back. They're talking about people like me, my kids. People like me need to stand up and run for office in this cycle and show another narrative. And I want to be the one, when I'm traveling around North Carolina, they're not going to be chanting, send them back. We'll be chanting, send him to Raleigh as our next state treasurer. Thank you, and I hope you vote for Ronnie Chatterjee on March 6th.
Matt Levinman.
You care about healthcare, public education, an inclusive economy, the environment. You care about this office. I hope that you'll find me on the ballot and vote for Matt Leatherman. I'm going to differentiate myself on the basis of experience. I'm currently on the state health plan. We use the retirement system. We've used it to save the life of our child. I know what this organization means from the perspective of somebody who uses it every day as the spouse of an educator. I also have the experience of leading the organization, supporting our most recent Democratic treasurer. This is not an organization where you can just say it and it will be so. It requires a great deal of navigation. It's a complex institution. I've got the bona fides and the record of getting it done, doing what we've all talked about today. It's that experience and those values that have earned me the endorsement of Councilmember Sharon Hightower here, former County Commissioner Margaret Arbuckle. I want to go across the state, build relationships like that at the local level, get this done, and ultimately take the fight to the person that we really wanted to beat, and that's Dale Folwell. Thank you again for coming out tonight.